This week at The Agenda examined why the middle class is falling behind, considered public struggles with addiction, and unpacked the economic cost of youth unemployment. The Agenda's Week in Review begins, however, with a premier's apology. It is not unprecedented, but it is pretty extraordinary for a premier and a former premier to be testifying at a public hearing, so close on the heels to one another. Dalton McGuinty a couple of weeks ago, you last week. Let's start with this. What did you find to be the most interesting revelation from former Premier McGuinty's testimony before the Legislative Committee on this?
Well, I think where I am on this, Steve, is that this whole situation, the relocation of the gas plants, the cost of that relocation, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. And nothing that I've heard in any of the testimony has convinced me that it should have happened the way it did. I believe that the gas plants were sited in the wrong place in the first instance, so the relocation should have happened. But the way it happened and the lack of clarity, remember when I came into this office, the issue was about documents, and were there documents available and being produced that were being asked for? So then it morphed into a conversation about the cost. And so I think where I am coming from is that this shouldn't have happened the way it did. We've had a lot of testimony from a lot of people now, and that needed to happen. That's why we opened up the process. That's why we said, let's get all the questions on the table and let's get the answers. That's what I said during the leadership needed to happen.
Did he give any answers that you didn't know?
Well, I mean, this is what I'm saying. I don't think that there's anything in the testimony that has been given at the committee that changes the fundamental fact that the process was bad. It shouldn't have happened the way it did. What it has done for me is it's made it clear to me that as the leader, as the premier, I need to check in with the people of Ontario, and I need to let them know where I am. And I am very sorry that this happened the way it did. I'm very sorry about the mistakes that we made. We made mistakes, our government made mistakes, things happened that shouldn't have happened, and they happened in a way that they shouldn't have happened. And I'm very sorry for that. And I take responsibility as having been part of that government. And more than that, Steve, as the Premier now, I take responsibility for putting a process in place that will ensure that this won't happen again.
Let me just do this because some people don't follow this as carefully as you and I do. That's further than you've gone to date. You have to date always said, I regret that it happened, but you have purposefully, I think, declined to give an apology.
Yeah.
Did you just give an apology?
I did just give an apology. And here's the thing. We've heard from pretty much all the people who were directly involved. And my sense from the people that I've heard from, regular Ontarians who aren't close to this, is that they want to hear that. They want to hear how I feel as the leader and what I think needs to be said. And I believe that people need to hear that. The people of Ontario need to hear that I'm sorry, because I am. I am sorry. I'm sorry that we didn't have a better process up front. I'm sorry that we didn't site those gas plants better. And that's why a new protocol needs to be in place.
Okay, I'm going to push you a little further then. You didn't actually make the decision to move the plant. Your predecessor made the decision. Dalton McGuinty made the decision. He said that in front of the committee.
Right.
Should he be offering an apology? He didn't at the committee.
So there's been a lot of testimony. People have heard what individuals had to say. I have to be straight with you and with the people of the province about where I am at this moment, and this is where I am. I think what's needed right now is for the Premier to say, I'm sorry about this, and I'm sorry that the process wasn't better, and I'm sorry that those mistakes were made, and we can't let them happen again. So I have to be true to what I believe needs to happen, Steve, and that's what I think needs to happen right now. But don't get me wrong. I believe that we need to move on now, and we need to move on not so that we can abdicate responsibility or leave it behind us in some kind of negative, dark way, but taking the lessons with us, put in place a better process. That's why the OPA and the Independent Energy Organization are putting together a regional energy plan. That's what we need in place.
Okay. I know you want to move on, but I'm not ready to move on yet.
No, that's fine.
He didn't apologize before the committee, and I want to be sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying he should have?
I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I have the deepest of respect for my colleagues, and I worked with Dalton for nearly a decade, and I believe in what he did. There was so much good that we did in government. He appeared before the committee. He said what he believed he needed to say, Steve, and he gave the information that he had. And so I have huge respect for that. I'm in this chair now, and it's my responsibility to level with the people of Ontario about how I see the situation and how I feel about the situation and what I'm hearing from them. I'm hearing people say that they want to hear an apology for the parts of this that our government messed up, the mistakes.
They got it from you, but they haven't got it from him.
Well, I'm the Premier, so that's what I'm able to offer.
But it was his decision.
Well, you know what? I was part of the government, and I put no distance between myself and Premier McGuinty on this. He was a great leader and Premier, and I was proud to serve with him. And I'm the Premier now, and this situation has unfolded the way it's unfolded, and it's my responsibility to do what I believe is right.
Do you think he showed adequate contrition at that hearing, given that his decision is going to cost taxpayers and ratepayers $600 million?
So this is what I'm really sorry about, that the decisions we made as a government and the lack of good process, because what we didn't do, Steve, is we didn't listen to municipalities well enough. We didn't listen to communities. That wasn't taken into account in the way that it should have been. There were even reports about air quality and the overtaxed airshed in some of those regions, and we didn't, for whatever reason, pay close enough attention to those. Those were the mistakes. So I have to learn from that. And so as we put a new plan in place, we have to make sure that we don't duplicate those mistakes.
I can't think of a better way to start this interview than to just have you set the table by reading just half a page of what you wrote, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Sounds good.
Here we go.
And this is from a chapter called I'm a Drunk. Oh, in case you're wondering, I'm not a cocaine addict. I prefer to drink. You found me in the middle of my story, and I happen to have just found a bag of cocaine in that bathroom, but honestly, I prefer drinking. I prefer drinking to anything in the world. Sex, food, sleep. My child, my lover, anything. I love to drink. Sometimes I think, no, I am drink. It's like my blood. Even before I get it, I can feel it in my veins. I'm not being poetic. I can actually feel it in my veins. It's gold. It's like little zaps of gold going through me, charging me, starting me up. When I drink, I fill with real gold and become godlike. So I'm not a cocaine addict. I'm a drunk. I have been drunk for a long time. I stopped drinking for a time, and then I started again.
And that's where we're going to pick up the narrative. Can you help us understand the intense compulsion you had to drink?
I can. I mean, that's what the book is about. I'm trying to, to help the reader who's not familiar with addiction to make him or her understand. The only way to compare it is that, when I became a mom and when I relapsed, I felt this overwhelming euphoric love for my child, and that was no match for my cravings. And, till this day, I'm baffled as to, why it was that way. But it felt, I just had to do it. I just had to do it. There was no way for me to not do it.
Do you have any added insight as to why the bottle won the competition between the bottle and motherhood?
Well, I mean, I'd like to say there was no competition because I tried to do both, and it was extremely hard to juggle. And of course, I wasn't entirely successful, and I certainly my alcoholism didn't really add to my being a new mom. But why did it win? I don't know. It's something that really baffles me, and I know that as an addict, once I have one drink, and my substance is alcohol, but once I have one drink, that's it. I do not understand how to drink socially. I do not understand how to drink to just, add it with your dinner or just to have a little buzz. Like, I always have to go sort of beyond that, and I don't really know how to stop, or my body doesn't know how to stop.
How old were you when you first realized this was a problem?
Around 27, my late 20s, and that was the first time when I got sober. And that was, when things there started to be a common denominator between things that were happening in my life that were not so, they were tragic things. So, losing relationships, losing a job, being threatened with losing my apartment, things like that. So that sort of added up to me, sitting there and going like, actually, I think I know what the common denominator is, and in my case, it was alcohol.
And why did you decide to write about this particular relapse related to the birth of your child?
Because I feel that, my addiction got so dangerous and so deadly, and a lot of addicts are alone. A lot of addicts end up alone. They end up losing their families and their jobs, and some end up on the street, some end up dead. And I found that I still had my family, I still have my place, I worked the same job, but I was going toward that ending that I didn't know what it would be. I certainly thought of ending it all. I had very dark thoughts, and so I thought writing this book, I would show how dangerously close an addict can come to that terrible end, and also how love of a child and family is no match for addiction. So I wanted to certainly expose the very ugly side of addiction.
Have you had addiction issues in the past?
Yeah, I'm a drunk, and I've continued to have addiction issues right up into this year, and it's a difficult thing for me to talk about. But I wrote about it recently because the subject was addiction, alcoholism, and I couldn't figure out how to be honest about my impressions about it without being honest about myself.
You say you're a drunk. Does that mean you cannot take a drink at all anymore?
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't work out well for me at all, or for anybody around me. It works out perhaps worse for the people around me.
And why did you decide to go public about it and write about it?
Well, there was reports recently that Rob Ford, the mayor of Toronto, who I spent a lot of time writing about, that his staff thought he had an issue with alcohol and that he needed to deal with it, and I couldn't figure out how to write about that. First of all, because I don't know the details of his personal life, but also my impressions from the reports that I was hearing were all formed by my own experiences, and there was just no way. I could have ignored the subject, I guess, but that didn't feel like it would be helpful either. So instead, I wrote sort of about what I don't know, which is the details of Rob Ford's personal life, and what I do know, which is how the public reports about his life relate to my own experience.
No disrespect to you as I asked George the next question, but you went public with some issues in your past while you were a politician, which has obviously much more significant implications than it would for Edward or for Jovita, because just everything is bigger and louder and stronger and everything when you do something like this in public life. Tell us about when you went public with your issues.
Well, my issues were related to drug addiction, and especially a period of about 5 or 6 years in my life in the 1990s, before I was elected, but already engaged in politics. I think as a gay man, I'd already, in a certain sense, enjoyed, if you will, the liberation of coming out. And therefore, in a sense, I already had at least some sense that being liberated and bringing information like that into the public domain would have value to me. And this was my motivation for doing it. I didn't really plan it in particular, but I was sitting at a table about to be called up to the stage at the Courage to Come Back Awards, put on every year by CAMH, which celebrates the lives of people who have dealt with their struggles related to addiction or mental health. And they had these massive, I think they must have been 12 or 14 feet high, the words courage spelled out. And I just said to myself, I really can't mount the stage and bring the traditional greetings as a minister of health and be a hypocrite. And I didn't really come out too candidly. I said, as one who has experienced the wrong side of too many sunrises, I can relate to the challenges that many of the people in this room are dealing with, and I'm, privileged to commend the people for the courage that they've shown. But one of the recipients that night was a Toronto Star columnist, a reporter, and she quite intuitively followed up the next day, and so the story began.
So the story began. So you had not had a chance, obviously, ahead of time to consult with staff or the Premier's office or anything to say.
Or my mother.
Or your mother, who didn't know.
Right.
So all of this hit the front page of the Toronto Star. I remember it was a big deal, big picture.
Yeah.
And what was the fallout?
I was in Northern Ontario that day, so relatively the bigger fallout for Premier McGuinty, I suppose. But true to every moment that I ever spent with him, he was first and foremost a human being, and really on that day when I created a headache for him that he didn't need, he was only, I should say to me at least, only interested in me. And overall the response was quite positive, and to the point that Christina Blizzard from the Toronto Sun wrote a column that said, okay, enough already of giving this guy credit for his period of life when he was doing illegal activities, etc. And I actually took a bit of direction from her on that point, on this notion of kind of over informing people or getting too granular about what the hell this life of drugs amounted to. But for me it was fundamentally liberating and empowering, and the letters that I received and the emails that I received from people, young gay men struggling with addiction, and saying, I found some comfort in that, or what have you. Even just one letter like that makes it all worthwhile.
Both the left and the right harken back with nostalgia to days when things were better for the middle class. The days when wages were strong, unions were fortified, and the future looked bright for future generations. But were things really that good? And if so, what can be done to bring back those glory days? Joining us now to help answer those questions, in Hamilton, Ontario, Charlotte Yates, Dean of Social Sciences at McMaster University. And with us here in studio, Monty McNaughton, PC, MPP for the riding of Lambton-Kent Middlesex. Jim Stanford, economist with the Canadian Auto Workers, and Finn Poshman, Vice President Research at the C.D. Howe Institute. It's good to have Finn, you back, and Jim, you back, and Charlotte, you back, and Monty, you for the first time. Nice to have you here. Thanks. I want to start, actually, Monty, by reading something of one of your colleagues. This is Randy Hillier in one of the dozen or so white papers that you folks have put out, laying forward what you believe to be a path to prosperity. This is the one on flexible labor markets, and I'm going to read a little excerpt of it, then we'll come out and discuss. The path Ontario is on today, says Randy Hillier, and the path it has been on for the last decade, bears little resemblance to the paths that were available to me when I began my journey into the workforce almost 4 decades ago. 40 years ago, Ontario's skies shone bright, with endless opportunities in manufacturing, skilled trades, professional services, and a burgeoning service sector. Multiple paths, all led towards a stable middle-class lifestyle. Whether you chose a career in mining, forestry, or agriculture, our resources were attainable through property ownership and development. Let's just pick this apart a bit. Charlotte, let me go to you first. Do you agree, first of all, with Randy Hillier, the Conservative MPP, that that's the way it actually was?
I think it's a lot more complex picture than that. For one thing, 40, 50 years ago, the place of women in the economy was in fact not a lot better. In fact, for many women today, they're in a much better position in terms of economic independence and in terms of their capacity to hold really good jobs that pay a decent wage and benefit. But I do agree that a large number of the middle class jobs are disappearing, and the question is why that would be the case.
And you want to fill in the blanks there?
Well, I think there are a number of things that have happened since then. I think the emphasis on resources, on manufacturing, we've seen a real shift in employment out of those areas, and that's in part marked by there's been growing levels of investment in capital investment in those industries, which means that labor has been displaced by machines. I mean, if one looks at the steel mills in Hamilton, they can probably produce 5 times as much steel as they did 40 years ago with the 1/10 of the workforce. That's progress, but it does mean then where else do the new middle class jobs come from? And that's where we need to be looking at emerging sectors. We certainly look at the health and education sectors for the growth of middle class good jobs, and in that case, the good jobs for women. And of course, there are the knowledge-based high-tech jobs that we need to look at. So I think, if anything, there needs to be an understanding that there's a shift in the sectors where the good jobs will be. And then the question is, how do we create the institutions that ensure those are good jobs?
Okay, let me follow up with you on this one, Monty, since it's your colleague's work that we're talking about right here. Do you find it a bit ironic that he's actually hearkening back to a time when governments weren't cutting back but were creating new social programs, when union membership was kind of strong or on the rise, as opposed to today where they seem to be in flight all over the place? There is a bit of irony that Randy Hillier is hearkening back to a better time that didn't feel as conservative as these times, no?
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with what Randy said in our Paths to Prosperity white paper on flexible labor markets. I mean, Ontario clearly has been on the wrong path for the last 10 years. I mean, we've lost 300,000 good, well-paying manufacturing jobs in the province of Ontario. We're no longer the place of choice for businesses to expand and to create jobs. So we need to focus on the fundamentals, get the fundamentals right, and take urgent action to get our economy back on track.
But the things that you seem to be advocating in this white paper seem to be the opposite of what was in place in this province 40, 50 years ago, which presumably was part of what made us strong. Comments?
No, I mean, we have to create the climate for companies to come to, and the current government, whether it's labor laws or whether it's expensive energy or just a growth in government that's unsustainable, that's what's hurting the middle class more than anything.
Jim, the suggestion seems to be that regardless of what was in place 40 or 50 years ago, what we need today may be different in order to create a more prosperous society. They have one approach. What do you think of it?
Well, obviously I don't support the conservative approach in terms of cutting taxes, cutting government programs, and attacking unions. I think that, in fact, unions and government programs were two of the important ingredients behind the rise of the middle class. I think that what we call a middle class job is really just a good job. It's a working class job with decent pay, decent benefits, and a certain degree of security. And those jobs don't fall from the sky, and they aren't created by the free market. They're created through policies and practices and institutions that are aimed at lifting up standards, lifting up all boats, if you like.
But I notice in Charlotte's list of what constitutes some of the good-paying, more secure jobs today, yes, she mentioned health and education. Mm-hmm. Those jobs tend to be in the public sector.
Yes.
The jobs of many generations ago that were the good-paying jobs in the mills and the factories and whatever were private sector jobs for the most part. So the prescriptions, I'm wondering, from all those years ago, do they work today?
Well, I think that part of the problem has been the structural change in our economy, of course. We have seen the structural change as well as the cyclical decline in manufacturing employment. We've seen the erosion of employment numbers in the resource sector, where traditionally white men anyways could get a decent middle-class job. But I don't think that the idea of middle class is necessarily tied to a particular sector. There's nothing inherent about a manufacturing job that makes it a middle class job. In fact, initially working in a factory was a terrible job, lousy pay, very dangerous. But it was the role of unions, of minimum standards, of government inspectors that lifted up those standards and those practices over time. Similarly, we think of a lousy job today as working, say, in the restaurant industry. But I don't think there's anything inherent about working in a restaurant that has to make it a lousy job. If we had those sorts of rules and standards and policies in place, working in a restaurant could be considered a decent middle-class career. And there are countries in the world, go to Europe, where working in the restaurant industry is considered a vocation. So I don't think it's so much what industries exist in Ontario. I think it's more our overall social approach to regulating the conditions of work. And if we want to create middle-class jobs, we can, even though the structure of the economy has changed.
Finn, it's about the approach. What do you say?
It's the approach and the context. Looking back historically, and just from the past few minutes of conversation, Charlotte and Monty had some very, very good and relevant points, and Jim had one as well. but you need to consider, one, a demographic context. Coming out of the 1950s through the 60s into the early 70s, we were riding a demographic wave, and the economic outlook associated with a strongly growing population in a positive environment where the world economy is growing at the same time is wildly different from a stagnant, relatively stagnant population growth rate, which is what we've seen for the past couple of decades, and much tougher global economic conditions.
What were growth rates 50 years ago?
They were generally around 5 to 7% real, sometimes a little lower. We did have a few recessions, but in a different space more broadly than we see now.
We're predicting a 1.5 for next year.
That's
here.
right, and that's not a bad outlook at all. There's something else going on too in the context we're talking about. You could make a fairly decent living by being strong and fit and working in a manufacturing shop, by working in forestry, by working in a mine. A completely different skill set from what it takes to survive in almost any workplace than today. And when we've shifted away, as we have through central and northern Ontario in big ways, from the forestry sector in particular, from the resource sector secondarily, which has also been pinched, you need to find, or people need to find, ways to reapply themselves, and that speaks to the skill set.
We have talked about innovation in this country for a long time. We've invested in it, and we've been frustrated about it. But if you ask yourself, have we introduced innovation or invited the younger generation to be the leaders in innovation, I think the answer is that we have not.
So what are you at Ryerson doing to turn that
That's
no into a
exactly
yes?
what we're doing. We're giving young people, not only our Ryerson students, but really young people generally, the opportunity to pitch an idea, to show a business plan, and to be introduced to people that will support them in starting their company. And I think people are overwhelmed by the success we're having. And it's good to see that other institutions and others are copying it, maybe putting their own spin on it. But the idea that you look to young people to take a leadership role in our country is important. You know, Steve, we've been asked often at universities, they would say, what proportion of your students are employed? Well, there's another question to ask, and that is, what proportion, how many jobs is your students creating? And I think we have to begin a culture that sees young people as playing that role
So
as
not
job
just
creators.
potential employees, but as job creators.
Yeah, they will be the greatest employees, but they also will be the greatest job creators. And at a cost per job that is a fraction of what is now being spent.
Let's see if we have three of them at this table here
For
tonight.
sure.
Jonathan, shall we chat?
Absolutely.
Okay, tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from a small town in Kettleby, which is just about an hour north from here. Grew up in a small little subdivision and enrolled in Ryerson University. I did undergrad in radio and television, and then followed up immediately with a master's in media production.
You want my job someday?
It sounds very interesting, as a matter of fact.
It is a very interesting job. I just figure all RTA guys want
Yeah.
it. Okay, so you're in what year right now in Ryerson?
I just currently finished my master's.
Finished, so you've done 4 years there?
5 years
You've
in
done
total
5
at
years
Ryerson,
in
yeah.
total. Tell me about your company.
Certainly. So Phosphorus Media is a full-serve interactive digital agency. We do a lot of interactive floors, walls, storefront window displays, large format touchscreens for both permanent and temporary installations.
Let's show some of the video here because we can
absolutely.
show it, I think, as you describe it.
So this is an interactive floor that we did. It was a big break, something we did for L'Oreal's 100-year anniversary, actually 2 years ago at this point. And this is when I was actually still at Ryerson University doing my master's. So while in school, I got flown down to New York to install that and manage it.
How do you do that?
So technically how it works is there's a series of overhead cameras that track as these models or people walk over the interactive floor. And we tell the software to move and manipulate the content based off of that interaction.
So you haven't got somebody up there, quote unquote, kicking the leaves away. This is all computer done.
This is all computer done and this is all live.
Can you tell I'm very old fashioned about this kind of thing? Okay, so as they move their feet, those
particles or whatever it may be is moving and manipulating, yeah.
Have you created jobs with this new venture of yours?
Absolutely.
How many?
We've got 4 full-time employees, and we've got about 12 freelance contractors that we continually bring up and down based off of the workload. So at any given week, sometimes we have up to 10 people working full-time on certain jobs.
How much do you pay them? Can I ask that?
Certainly, it ranges from $35 to $80 an hour. And for high-skilled programmers, visual effects artists, they ask for even up to $85 an hour. And I'm okay paying that. If you're very skilled and technically savvy at what you do, this is kind of market rate, and the people who understand it are willing to pay for it.
Is your company making money?
Absolutely, yeah.
You are
it
making
is.
money.
We are, yeah.
Making money, hiring people, paying taxes.
We are.
So this seems like a pretty good thing. Michael, let's bring you in. Where are you from?
My family is originally from Poland.
You were born there?
No, I was actually born here, coincidentally.
You were born here?
Yes, I was.
So why do you have a Polish accent?
Well, my parents are both from Poland. They came here when they were really young, well, in their early 20s. So while they were struggling finding jobs, they would only speak Polish to me because they had no chance of learning English at the time. So I didn't learn English till I was maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Interesting. Okay. And
Yeah.
you grew up where in Canada?
Toronto.
You grew up in Toronto?
Yeah. I didn't realize I had an accent, but
You have the hint of an accent.
a little bit. Yeah.
I can hear it just a little bit.
Tiago has a little more of an accent.
We'll get to him in a second. I'm picking on you for the moment.
Sure, sure.
How many years at Ryerson?
I did about 3 years at Ryerson, biomedical engineering.
Biomedical engineering.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It's essentially the study of basically engineering, but applying that to the medical field. So a combination of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, software engineering, all applied to medicine.
And your company's called Bionic Laboratories, or Laboratories, however you want to say it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and what does that do?
So that's a company that we started with a vision to fill gaps in medical markets. So if we see a product that isn't being created right now, we create that. What you see on the screen right now, it's basically a device that allows people who are paralyzed to walk. The reason we chose that is because currently there's absolutely nothing available for a person who has a spinal cord injury and wants to get up and walk.
Okay, what in this picture that we're looking at now is actually your product?
Everything.
Everything.
So what's running it is our software. So we created a smart system that analyzes signals in the body, and that gets translated into motion through hardware, electronic hardware that we created, which translates into motion in mechanical hardware that we've created.
And you have tested this on people who literally cannot walk?
Currently, it's being tested on able-bodied people in our in-house trials, and we're going into clinical trials by the end of the year with patients who have an injury.
Who, in other words, they're in wheelchairs, they can't walk otherwise.
Exactly.
That's what you're going to test with.
Yeah.
Is he your partner?
Yes, he is.
He is. Should we bring you into this, Tiago?
Definitely.
Where are you from?
I'm from Brazil originally.
And came to Canada when?
About 7 years ago.
7 years ago,
Yeah.
okay. And how many years at Ryerson?
3 years of Ryerson, same program, biomedical engineering. That's how I met Michael, and that's how we started the company, Bionic Laboratories.
Just tell us how did that hook up? Like, what did you guys see in each other where you said, oh, there's the germ of something here that we should work on?
I think the connection is it's very related to entrepreneurship and the idea of creating a startup company. Is that when I was in the engineering program, of course, there's a lot of midterms, exams, there's all the academic life that you have to follow. And I wanted something more. So I wanted to create something that I was the main creator, I was the father of it. And then when I met Michael, he had the same vision. He wanted to do projects that were kind of outside the schoolwork. So I would still do my schoolwork, but I wanted to create something that was new. And at the time, it wasn't the bionic legs that we just saw on the screen. It was a prosthetic arm that was controlled by brain power. So the person would literally put a headset on their head, and we can pick up brain signals, and we could control a prosthetic arm. That was my focus at the beginning when I was at university. And I met Michael. He loved the idea. We started working on that. And then from there, we learned a lot in terms of technology, signaling, electronics, hardware. and we merged from that to the bionic legs.
Do either of you in your family backgrounds have people who are amputees or who are physically handicapped, anything like that?
I don't have anyone. Actually, every single person that I talk to asks me that question. Because like they try to find a connection between
Well, that's it. We're looking for the inspiration behind the idea.
The market, whatever we chose, and my family or my background, right? But it's just, I believe the gap that was there in the medical market was so huge because the wheelchair was created 1,500 years ago. And since then, nothing has been developed to help paraplegics. You see cell phone technology coming up every day, but nothing for paraplegics has been developed. And it just, that shocked me and certainly shocked Michael as well.
Yeah.
Is the dream to have every disabled person walking someday thanks to your technology?
I think that's one of the dreams. There are more dreams in the game. And I'm going to quote something that Steve Jobs said. A lot of people are trying to build companies to sell after 2 years. So they're looking for the exit strategy from the beginning. And what I like when I met Michael, the vision that we had is that we don't want to sell it. We don't want to do something, just sell it. The whole idea is to build this enterprise, this company that can develop any medical product, because I have other ideas. That's my first focus, right? So of course, one of the dreams is to get this through, this exoskeleton, get people walking, but I want to put my other ideas into this business. And starting your own business and your own company gives you the potential to do that. Any other idea can put it inside the company. I have investors that are already invested in the bionic legs. And if the bionic legs is a success, I can do the same with following products.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website. That's theagenda.tvo.org, or on our iTunes channel, or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.